It is said that certain moments linger in the shadows of our memory, haunting us for eternity. Not due to their noise, not because of their aggression, but rather for their silence. So hushed, you were unaware of the unfolding moment. 2 years have passed since that fateful day. It has been 2 years since my nephew posed a question that transformed my entire perspective. Auntie, would you agree if I revealed my true desires to you? The echoes linger in my mind, vivid as though they unfolded just yesterday. And I continue to ponder, how did we arrive at this point? How did a mere yes unravel the life I believed was secure? Trouble was the last thing on my mind. I found myself not in pursuit of affection, attention, or any other desire. Once I shared my life with a husband. Once I possessed a dwelling. From the outside, it would have seemed that I possessed all that a woman could desire. Yet the solitude, loneliness slips in quietly, uninvited, without so much as a tap on the door. It infiltrates through the fissures. It resembles sharing a meal with someone whose gaze seldom meets yours. It feels as though silence has been drawn taut, night after night. It is akin to rising from slumber next to a man who has forgotten your presence. Not quite. And then Ethan arrived. My sister's son, harsh, mourning, adrift. In a home where I had become invisible to everyone, he was the one who saw me. Initially, it seemed innocuous. Little details. I appreciate the delightful dinner, a dialogue that stretched beyond its intended duration in the kitchen, a fleeting look that contained an unspoken truth, one we both hesitated to acknowledge. I reassured myself that he was merely seeking solace. I reassured myself that I was merely offering him warmth. I reassured myself that it was merely innocent, until it ceased to be, until one night, when the tempest raging outside paled in comparison to the turmoil within my soul. As his voice pierced the shadows. Auntie, would you agree if I shared this with you? Do you know what I truly desired? I ought to have declined. I ought to have taken a stand. I ought to have recalled each promise I had made to myself, to my husband, to the life we had constructed together. Yet my heart did not refuse. My body offered no resistance. In that delicate instant, I found myself uttering the word yes. And that single yes, that one resounding yes, was sufficient to alter the course of everything. One believes they have a firm grasp on their boundaries, until those very lines begin to fade away. You believe you understand your essence, until the quiet voice within you murmurs yes, at moments when you ought to be shouting no. I never envisioned that one simple yes could dismantle the very essence of the woman I believed myself to be. At times, the desires you fulfill may haunt you for all eternity. Join us as poignant stories come to life, for certain truths are softly shared, while others are boldly revealed. This one is merely at its inception. In the past, I wandered these corridors, a mere specter among the living, not in a tragic or dramatic manner, simply diminished. Here yet unnoticed, essential yet unwelcome, living yet empty. Daniel and I, we have not always existed in this manner. There was a time when our conversations flowed freely, touching upon every subject under the sun. When a gentle caress on my back carried significance. When a glance exchanged over the table could envelop me in a sense of security. Yet, somewhere in the midst of the relentless work hours, the anniversaries that slipped by unnoticed, the justifications that piled up, and the silences that expanded beyond recognition, we lost that connection. We transformed into courteous acquaintances, conveying a dwelling devoid of existence. And this house, oh, it appeared flawless. All things arranged perfectly, a pristine kitchen, adorned with art on the walls, and fresh flowers gracing the table each week, acquired by yours truly naturally. Yet it felt frigid, as if one were residing within the confines of a picture frame. Daniel immersed himself in his work, engaging in phone calls that stretched late into the night and sending emails during dinner. Journeys that extended further and further. And when he returned home, he was not truly present. He would recline on the couch, lost in an endless scroll. A smile, perhaps, a subtle acknowledgement, a gentle peck on the cheek, if fortune smiled upon me. Yet, there were never eyes that met my gaze. never hands that extended toward me without a desire for something in return. I had ceased my inquiries. With time, understanding unfolds. You cease the effort to occupy the void. You merely exist alongside it. Then, Ethan made his entrance. My sibling. May she find peace in eternal rest. The past arrived unexpectedly. Oncology. Swift, merciless. She was his everything. Naturally, we welcomed him into our fold. It was the appropriate course of action. He made his entrance, carrying nothing but a solitary suitcase. Eyes weary beyond their years. A heart burdened with sorrow beyond what any young soul ought to endure. That first night he arrived is etched in my memory. Framed by the doorway, drenched from the downpour, resembling a wayward child attempting to don the guise of adulthood. I enveloped him in a soft towel, brewed a comforting cup of tea, and remained by his side until the tremors in his shoulders subsided. In that fleeting instant he came into view. I truly witnessed him, and perhaps, for the first time in ages, someone truly noticed me as well. Initially, it was pure and untainted. Indeed, it was. He would accompany me in the kitchen as I prepared the meal. He would inquire about the events of my day. He would share stories of his classes with me, the matters at hand. He longed for his mother, the void he bore like a second skin. And I paid heed. I absorbed every word as if it were a rare treasure, a gift that had been absent from my life for far too long. It lacked any lofty purpose. There exists no scheme. Two solitary souls bridging the quietness between them. Yet the house started to transform. Perhaps I did, after all. I found myself dwelling on conversations that ought to have concluded. I observed how his gaze would seek out mine as he spoke. My heart would race at the mere sight of his smile, the sound of his laughter, or even just his presence in the same room. It filled me with dread, yet it resonated with such humanity. Daniel appeared oblivious, or perhaps he was aware but chose to remain silent. He had vanished more profoundly than before, and when he was home, he felt like he was light years away, ensconced behind a screen, behind a barrier I could no longer scale. Ethan observed. Indeed, he did. One evening, while I arranged the table, he turned to me and remarked, "Auntie, you have a way of making everything so lovely. It seems that few people express this sentiment to you as often as they should." And a part of me shattered wide open. It wasn't the language. It was the act of being seen, the warmth of appreciation, the longing of desire. The house retained its familiar appearance. Yet, within, it resonated with a distinct essence. The air felt denser. Every glance lingered for a beat too long. Every brush of skin ignited a spark of electricity. I ought to have put an end to it right then and there. I ought to have set the boundary before it faded away. Yet, after enduring a prolonged hunger, even the smallest morsels can seem like a grand banquet. Before I realized it, I found myself anticipating his presence with eagerness. In response to his inquiries, to his smiles that extended beyond anything Daniel could muster these days, I reassured myself that it posed no threat. I reassured myself that he required solace. I was merely offering it. Yet, beneath the surface I was aware. I understood the gravity of the glances exchanged between us. The warmth lingered in the words we exchanged. Somewhere along the journey, it became clear that we were no longer merely occupying the quiet moments. We were crafting an entity that eluded definition for both of us. What could possibly be more disheartening? I found myself reluctant to bring it to an end. After countless years of existing in the shadows, I felt the spark of life within me once more. I was observed, and that filled me with a deeper dread than anything else could. For I was aware, as we delve further into this delicate bond, the more challenging it becomes to extricate ourselves. And still, I found myself descending deeper. A single smile, a single exchange of words. With each heartbeat, life unfolds. It was a Saturday marked by the gentle patter of rain. The kind where the outside world appears muted and burdensome, while the confines of the house seem to shrink in on themselves. Daniel had returned to the familiar embrace of home. However, not quite. Confined once more within the walls of his study. I didn't inquire about the purpose. I had ceased to inquire long ago. The rain whispered gently against the windows, unwavering, unyielding. In that stillness, I found myself reverting to my familiar routine. I prepared a meal. It was quite foolish, indeed. Cooking had transformed into my sacred ritual, the art of my pretense. That existence still possessed a flicker of warmth, a source of solace. A roast was nestled in the oven, its savory aroma beginning to fill the air, potatoes gently bubbling on the stove. The aroma of rosemary and garlic wafted through the atmosphere. And then came the moment that changed everything. There he stood, Ethan, resting against the threshold of the kitchen. With arms crossed and hair still glistening from the shower, the t-shirt clung to him just so. I cast a fleeting glance his way, offering a polite smile. I reassured myself that it was insignificant. I reassured myself that he was merely accompanying me. Yet, deep down, my heart understood the truth. Upon his entrance, the air thickened with an undeniable gravity, a persistent awareness that clung to me. He advanced with measured intent, observed my transition from stove to counter, adjacent to the oven. His gaze remained fixed upon me. "It has an incredible aroma," he remarked. "Speak softly. Your presence transforms everything into a sanctuary." My breath hitched. Daniel had not uttered such words to me in. The passage of time eluded my memory entirely. I brushed it aside with a chuckle. It's merely an evening meal. Yet within, a transformation began to take shape. A delicate essence. I extended my hand toward the pepper mill, my fingers grazing his in the process. A flicker of light. A tremor ran through the air. Absurd. I reprimanded me. Yet there came another delicate nuance. He presented me with a wooden spoon. Our fingers brushed together, lingering for a heartbeat too long. As I lifted my gaze, I found him already observing me. Not in the manner of a boy. Not in the manner of a nephew. Negative. His smile directed at me carried a depth that transcended youthful innocence. A man beheld a woman. For the first time in years, I experienced the profound sensation of being truly acknowledged. Not from a sense of duty. Not from a sense of courtesy. Not merely as a wife or an aunt to someone. Yet it was simply due to my own essence. And that was perilous. I gently stirred the pot, seeking to calm my trembling hands, concentrated on the movement, the cadence, the gentle scrape of the spoon against the bottom of the pan. Yet my thoughts surged forward. Withdraw. Ensure this remains secure. Do not allow it to escalate any further. And then his voice whispered softly behind me. Auntie. Pivoted. Gazes intertwined. He entered, causing my breath to hitch once more. Auntie, may I share something with you? I nodded, feeling an unexpected dryness in my throat. And then came the moment that changed everything. He uttered a wish into the ether. A singular force poised to transform the very fabric of existence. One that would transform my yes into an eternity of inquiries. Auntie, would you agree if I revealed my true desires to you? In that instant, the rain beyond grew faint. The once inviting warmth of the kitchen faded into an unsettling chill. The atmosphere surrounding us grew dense, burdened by an unnamed weight that eluded our grasp. And I found myself unable to move, for I understood that whatever words escaped my lips in that moment, there would be no turning back. I continued to remind myself, it was merely a connection. There's no harm in that, is there? He was in mourning. He sought solace. And I was merely offering him a touch of warmth, a sense of familiarity, something secure. That is precisely what I conveyed to my own thoughts. Yet, as those words echoed in my mind, repeated like a sacred incantation, I sensed the fissures within them. For the reality was, I wasn't merely offering him something. I was also taking something, stealing those fleeting looks that reignited my spirit. He uttered my name gently, as if it held significance. Embracing the weight of his gaze hung in the air, lingering on me longer than it ought to have, and I craved it deeply. Oh, how I craved sustenance. Daniel's face haunted my thoughts, a chill settling in. Remote. In the span of a year, I could tally on a single hand the moments he had laid a finger upon me. The moments when his gaze met mine, truly seeing me, not merely passing through my presence. His love once enveloped me in the gentle gesture of brushing a strand of hair behind my ear, as his hand sought mine beneath the blankets in the quiet of the night. At this moment, silence reigns, a subtle acknowledgement, a smile devoid of warmth, a fleeting kiss that seemed more like routine than desire, and there stood Ethan, this young man, his eyes heavy with sorrow. Moreover, there is an additional aspect to consider. Perilous situation. A desire I was never meant to crave. Yet I did. That was truly the most dreadful experience. Section. I reminded myself that he is in pain. He simply requires companionship. This is all there is. That is all it shall ever remain. Yet, with each utterance, my conviction waned further. For within the depths, hidden beneath layers of guilt and shame, lay the undeniable truth. I found myself in need of someone as well. I craved recognition. I craved the feeling of being desired. I yearned to transcend the shadows, to embrace a presence beyond mere specter in my own existence. In those fleeting moments, as he gazed at me with those weary, yearning eyes, I ceased to be his aunt. I was not a woman bound to a man who had departed from my life in every sense except for the title he held. I identified as a woman longing for the warmth of a gentle touch, a woman who longed for selection, a woman who longed for the sense of significance that had eluded her, and that filled me with dread. Desiring those things felt inherently flawed. It seemed self-serving, yet it possessed a distinctly human quality. And the harder I struggled against it, the more powerful it grew. I found myself glancing at the clock, pondering when Ethan would finally return home. I would choose a different blouse just to be on the safe side. I found myself lingering in the kitchen longer than necessary, yearning for just one more moment, one more smile, one more spark to reignite the feeling of being alive. I loathed myself for it, and yet, I found myself unable to cease. The moment he uttered my name, my heart danced with an uncontainable flutter. A wave of warmth enveloped me as his hand lightly grazed mine. The ache within me intensified, an unrelenting force that I could not quell. Each time his gaze met mine, it felt as though I were the sole occupant of the space. On certain nights, I would find myself lying awake beside Daniel, tears quietly tracing their path onto my pillow. Weep for the dreams I yearned to grasp. Weeping for the emotions I had permitted to take root within my soul. I continued to murmur softly to myself, reminding that the hour is not yet lost. You have yet to step over the boundary. Not at this moment. Yet, there are lines that remain unspoken, quietly lingering in the shadows. It is only in hindsight that one realizes the boundaries have been breached, often when the moment has already slipped away. Following that evening in the kitchen, everything transformed. Perhaps it is I who have transformed. I began to pay closer attention to the subtle details. The frequency of Ethan's presence in my life. How he would glide into the room in Daniel's absence. How his presence had transformed into the very essence of my silent anticipation. He found himself increasingly drawn to my company. Initially, it appeared to be quite harmless. He would stay close as I prepared the meal. Take a seat at the table as I tend to the task of grading papers or folding laundry. Extend a hand to assist with bringing in the groceries. And I allowed him to proceed. I reassured myself that he is alone. He has just experienced the profound loss of his mother. This is the essence of family. Yet, beneath the surface, I understood that this was not the complete reality. The intensity of his gaze upon me was undeniable. The moment my breath would falter as he stepped into the room. The flutter in my chest as he glided by, a mere whisper of presence. Those were matters beyond my ability to rationalize, and I wasn't particularly inclined to make the effort. As dusk settled, the tempest raged beyond the walls. Daniel had reached out to inform me that he would be staying late at work. Once more, it hardly astonished me any longer. The silence that accompanied his absence was almost a welcome reprieve. In the living room, I found myself aimlessly scrolling through the TV, searching for something to occupy the endless hours. Suddenly Ethan emerged. "Shall we have a movie night?" he inquired. Whispers of sound. Yet, there was an undeniable depth in his gaze. There was a moment of uncertainty. I ought to have declined. I ought to have set my boundaries at that moment. Yet I found myself smiling. Absolutely. We selected a classic film. A figure I had not laid eyes on in many years. One I recognized would pull at the heartstrings, convey a sense of intimacy within the space. More inviting. I whispered to myself, "It's merely a film. He seeks solace. This is acceptable." Initially, we found ourselves perched at opposite ends of the couch. Yet, as the film unfolded, the distance that once separated us appeared to diminish. A fleeting look here, a gentle chuckle echoed softly, a subtle remark that hung in the air, stretching the moment beyond its natural bounds. What comes next? The moment captured in that scene. A mother and her son captured in a moment on screen. Shattered. Holding tightly to one another amidst sorrow. I sensed Ethan move next to me. I cast my gaze aside. His face was awash with tears, quiet, relentless. In a moment of instinct, I extended my hand. Intuition. I drew him closer, my arms encircling his trembling form. I spoke to myself. This exudes a nurturing essence. It embodies solace. This is essential for him. Yet as I grasped him, something within me shattered, revealing a vast expanse of emotion. He pressed his face into my shoulder. My fists gripped tightly around my sweater. Breath came in ragged gasps. Yet, there remains. I held on tightly. I was unable to. Time slipped away moment by moment, perhaps even more. Subsequently, his voice echoed through the room. Gentle, almost non-existent. I long for the warmth of someone's embrace. Holding on steadfastly, I stood still, caught in a moment of disbelief. My heart pounded fiercely within my chest. Yet, my hand continued to glide along its path. Possess. Gradually, it was almost a painful experience. I started to caress his hair gently. Once more. Once more. I am attempting to persuade myself that this embodies a sense of motherhood. This is precisely what he requires. You are not at fault in any way. Yet it had grown more complex than before, because of how his body seamlessly melded with mine. The manner in which my fingers hesitated, extending their touch just a moment longer than necessary. The manner in which my eyes ignited with an indescribable intensity. This was not a secure situation, and I was aware of it. I whispered to myself, merely a touch, extended, only until his tears cease, only until this moment fades away. However, it did not succeed. It grew more profound, and then he raised his head. Our gazes intertwined. Within that gaze, a change occurred. It was an action that neither of us could undo. Following that evening on the couch, he lingered in my thoughts, an unshakable presence that refused to fade. Regarding the manner in which he held on to me, concerning the manner in which his gaze had sought out my own, concerning the silent exchange that lingered between us, and remained suspended in that moment, dense in the atmosphere, I whispered to myself, allow it room to breathe, take a moment to pause, a moment steeped in sorrow. That concludes everything. Yet, the vast expanse of space remained elusive to me. For every fleeting glance now, a question lingered in the air. With each room we stepped into, a sense of constriction enveloped us, and every part of me that had remained untouched for an eternity. I found myself awake once more. Daniel had embarked on a business trip, a spontaneous journey at the 11th hour. I remained silent. What would compel me to do that? The house resonated with an unsettling silence in his absence, yet not without a voice. For the present moment, each breath I inhaled felt, amplified, each motion, experienced a sense of being observed. On that fateful night, the storm made its ominous return. The windows trembled under the relentless assault of the wind. The rain pounded relentlessly against the window pane. Thunder rumbled across the heavens, echoing an age-old omen. Reclined in the sanctuary of my bed, I found myself enveloped in a cocoon of warmth and comfort. The lights dimmed into darkness, attempting to delve into the depths of my mind, attempting to feign indifference as I lingered in anticipation, attempting to feign ignorance about the fact that I had glanced at my phone 3 times, yearning for a message that remained elusive. Then came a gentle rap, almost non-existent. My breath hitched. I was aware. I was aware long before I made the move. I ought to have remained motionless. I ought to have overlooked it. The door should have been locked. Yet I chose to rise, traversed the floor on quaking limbs, and then it was opened. There he stood, a figure etched against the backdrop of the world. Ethan, moist strands of hair, gaze unblinking, reflective and smooth, shoulders stooped under the burden of a load he could no longer bear by himself. For an extended stretch of time, silence enveloped us both. The tempest howled in the distance, sending flashes of illumination and darkness dancing across his features. And then his voice resonated through the air, just a breath above silence. I longed for it. You would allow me to experience love. Only a single time. My heart ceased to beat. All that lies within. I screamed. Don't. Cease. Please shut the door behind you. At this moment. Yet my feet remained still. My hand remained steady against the frame. And the essence of my being. My heart shattered. In his voice, I recognized the echo of my own yearning. In his gaze, I beheld the echoes of countless desolate nights. Each unfulfilled desire. Each a fragment of my being that had been in anticipation. For an individual to utter such words. He is in pain. Pondered. My heart aches. This transcends mere desire. This explores the concept of void. Simply, profound void. I moved to the side. Hardly. That is sufficient. He stepped inside. Gradually. If he moved too quickly, the moment would break apart. And, indeed, we would. I found myself standing there, embracing my own form, struggling against every urge. Each cry echoing in my thoughts urged me to flee. Yet, in that moment, once more his voice echoed. Just hold me, please. That is all. I took a deep breath. The head inclined slightly in acknowledgement, and spread my arms wide. He folded inward. They accepted him as if he were one of their own. It was as if he had been anticipating this moment for just as long as I had. His breath caught against my neck. His hands quivered gently against my back. And mine. They glided through the world, unburdened by contemplation. Fingers intertwined in his hair, embracing him with a grip that perhaps lingered too long. And for a single heartbeat, all else slipped from my mind. I lost sight of my own identity. His identity slipped from my memory. I overlooked the existence that lay just beyond that threshold. In that fleeting moment, I allowed him to sense his significance. I allowed myself to embrace the essence of life. And then, our lips met in a fleeting caress. Unforeseen, unintentional, not a single kiss, merely a fleeting touch. Yet, I remained steadfast, not retreating. Not at this moment. In that fleeting moment, all that I had attempted to maintain cohesion unraveled. For it is that suffices. In a single heartbeat, a lifetime can be unraveled. The dawn that followed. I rose before the dawn's first light. For a fleeting instant. Please hold on for a moment. I seemed to have overlooked that. I reclined in stillness, eyes gently fluttering open. The gentle patter of rain fills the air, dimmed to a muted rhythm. Yet, in a sudden moment of clarity, it struck me. The burden of my actions lingered heavily upon me, of what I had permitted, regarding that which I could not reclaim. The void within me expanded with alarming speed. Such vastness. Breath eluded me. A fleeting whisper in the depths of my chest. I turned onto my side. He was absent. Certainly he was not. The bed exuded a chill unlike any I had ever experienced. And the dwelling. A change lingered in the air of the house. Weightier, as if every wall possessed a gaze. Now, as if every piece of furniture was aware. With a cozy sweater draped around my shoulders, I descended the stairs, heart racing, fingers quivering. The light in the kitchen glowed softly. A coffee mug rests on the counter, partially filled, pristine. Yet, Ethan remained elusive, absent from sight. A note, hastily scrawled on the notepad beside the phone, caught my eye. Stepping out for a while. I shall return shortly.
No antes.
There is an absence of warmth. Only separation. I gazed at those words until my sight blurred. Obscured. Food eluded me. Thoughts eluded me. I found myself seated at the table. The silence envelopes me, overwhelming in its intensity. The house's every creak resonated with an unsettling intensity. Each tick of the clock resonated like a verdict. And the depths of my thoughts. It echoed that moment repeatedly, cradling his head in my hands. His breath lingered against my skin. The gentle collision of our lips, remaining in the moment, merely sufficient to bring about our mutual ruin. I reassured myself that it was unintentional. It was never meant to unfold this way, yet the guilt remained indifferent. It rested in my chest like a heavy stone. I endeavored to occupy my time. As I folded the laundry, my vision was obscured, wiping down surfaces that were already pristine. Yet no sound could overshadow the truth. A boundary had been breached, yet not a soul dared to traverse it. Time slipped away. The sun ascended into the sky. The tempest yielded to a harsh, fragile illumination. There remains no trace of Ethan. I reminded myself that he requires some distance. He is in the midst of processing. You are as well. Yet, beneath the surface, a more profound fear murmured softly. What if he is no longer by your side? What happens when you've shattered something irreparably? As the afternoon waned, the front door let out a soft creak, breaking the stillness of the moment. Echoes of footsteps, leisurely, ambiguous. I stood still, caught in a moment of disbelief. Fingers clenched around the counter. A fierce grip that sent a sharp ache through my knuckles. Ethan stood framed in the doorway, heavy-lidded gaze, countenance wan, shoulders pulled taut. For what felt like an eternity, we simply gazed into one another's eyes. I felt the urge to express myself. I wished to express my sincerest apologies, to declare it a blunder, to utter a word that might mend this situation. Yet my lips remained sealed. For no words could ever encapsulate the depth of what had transpired between us. At last his voice emerged, gentle, stretched thin. My sincere gratitude to you, for not casting me aside. And then he vanished into thin air. Ascend the staircase. The door is shut, and I remained there rooted in place. Rooted. Amidst the weight of guilt and yearning, there resided a hollow ache, nameless and profound. The weight of the house pressed down upon me. Each sound resonated with an intensity that felt almost overwhelming. Each moment of quiet, resounding. Upon Daniel's return that evening, an unmistakable change lingered in the air. His gaze lingered on me, stretching the moment into something profound, more acute, as though he detected a change in the air, as though he sensed the tempest that had already swept through these lands. Barriers. He remained silent, yet within his gaze, I perceived the emergence of inquiries I felt unprepared to confront. And what of Ethan? He became increasingly distant, retreating into silence. Let us no longer tarry in the kitchen. Gone are the days of furtive looks, merely walls, constructed swiftly, constructed to great heights. And what of me? I found myself in that house, which had once seemed overwhelmingly spacious, now feeling achingly solitary, now burdened by the oppressive weight of a solitary affirmation. I believed I could shoulder the burden by myself. I believed that by holding it within, I could manage it better. Concealed beneath the surface, perhaps it would diminish over time. Perhaps it might forfeit its form. It's a sharp bite, yet it has not. If anything, it remains unchanged. It has become more burdensome. For now, each time I encounter him, I am reminded of the person I have become. I am not the person I intended to become. I am not the person I vowed to remain true to. Yet, the woman who embraced the affirmative when every fiber of her being urged her to decline. And I ponder time and again, was I selfish? Did I offer him solace? Or deceive him? The memory of his gaze that morning lingers with me still, as if emerging from the ruins, stretching out for anything that bore the semblance of affection. And what was it that I bestowed upon him? A fleeting embrace of warmth ensconced within a tapestry of enduring guilt. I find myself pondering whether he harbors animosity towards me at this moment. I find myself pondering whether he harbors a deep-seated disdain for himself. I find myself pondering whether we share that sentiment. There are moments when I long to reveal it, to utter those words into the air, to an individual, any individual, who can guide me on how to alleviate this weight pressing against my ribs. But who, indeed? Whom can I rely on for this? Who among them could learn of my actions and continue to gaze upon me with the same eyes? It is not Daniel. It is not the memory of my sister. Not even the image that stares back at me. Thus I bear this burden in solitude. I offer a smile when the moment calls for it. I express myself in the places where my voice is anticipated. Yet, hidden beneath the surface, I am shattering. And the most troubling aspect, the one that jolts me awake in the dead of night, breathless and panicked, is that a tiny, hidden fragment of my being longs for it, longs for the sensation of being desired, longing for that singular, wild heartbeat that brought me back to life. And I loathe myself for that, above all else. For if I allowed myself to desire that once, if I permitted the boundaries to fade just a little, what assurance do I have that I wouldn't do so again? And I tremble with apprehension. That was not the final boundary I shall traverse. Have you ever engaged in an endeavor? To remain loyal, to avoid causing pain, yet, in its essence, to regain a sense of humanity, to experience the gentle caress of warmth upon a skin that has turned cold? To experience the sensation of being acknowledged after a prolonged period of obscurity, to listen to the gentle murmur of your own heartbeat. You continue to exist. I remind myself, I had no intention of doing that. I remind myself that I was merely attempting to fill a void within me. Yet the void can pose a perilous threat, compels us to extend our grasp. It allows us to escape from reality. It compels us to seize what we can never return. Pray enlighten me. Does comfort retain its innocence? What if you both realized it wasn't? For that is the inquiry that lingers in my mind. Each, alone, day. And if this tale, if every aspect of this tale awakened a feeling within you, if it stirred memories of a time you'd prefer to leave behind, or a boundary you nearly breached, join Heartfelt Tales Unfold for the next captivating story. It may resonate even more intimately. Ethan continues to reside here. We gather around the same table to share our meals. He responds only when addressed. He offers a smile when the situation demands it. Yet there are certain silences. Express what transcends mere language. When I gaze upon him, my nephew fades from view. I behold the young lad who longed for affection, and the woman who accepted the invitation. As I take my seat opposite him at the dinner table, utensil poised in grasp, voice unwavering, and within, I am breaking apart, for the simple reason that they exist. Instances that do not dissolve unions. They do not detonate throughout spaces or tear asunder dwellings. Negative, a few fleeting instances. They obliterate something profound. They shatter the image of the self you once believed in. And as the lights fade into darkness, as silence envelopes the house, in that moment the whisper emerges. You allowed it to unfold. It was your desire. You have transformed beyond your former self. Perhaps you simply never do. It shall return once more. Join us on a journey with Heartfelt Tales Unfold. For it is often the most challenging narratives that unfold quietly within us.